Hello everyone and welcome back to another classic movie review, the new series we're doing here every Thursday on movie nights. This is a follow-up to last week's video on 1989's Batman. Today I'm going to be reviewing Batman Returns from 1992. This film sees the return of Michael Keaton as Batman, Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon, and Michael Gough as Alfred. There are some newcomers in this film. We have Michelle Pfeiffer playing Catwoman and Danny DeVito playing the Penguin, and Christopher Walken playing Max Schreck, sort of like a corrupt businessman into politics. So I'll go ahead and say up front, I am of the minority in that I think this film is slightly better than Batman 1989, but just because I think that doesn't mean that I think it's this, perfect, wonderful, great movie. I do think it has its problems, and I'm going to dive into all of that right now. First, let's talk about some pros that carry over from the previous film. Number one being the sets. Like I said before, in the previous video, Tim Burton's version of Gotham is my all-time favorite cinematic version of Gotham. I think it just perfectly captures just everything you need to know about the feel of the city, and that carries over directly into this film as well. Michael Keaton is phenomenal as Bruce Wayne and Batman again. We get a little bit more emotion into sort of the, deeper psychology of the character. Not as much as you would want, but it is slightly treaded on a bit more. But there's a lot going on in this film, and that is one of the downsides, but however, it does balance things pretty well. The performances of Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer are also great additions, especially Michelle Pfeiffer. She is really kind of the standout of this film. Although Danny DeVito's performance is so weird and disturbing, but you can tell that was definitely the intended purpose of that performance. And something that's very clear with this film is that while the original film had a lot of Tim Burton style and a lot of studio notes, there was too many, it felt that there were too many studio notes. In this film, I felt like a little bit too much freedom was given to Tim Burton, and that there is a magic somewhere in the middle that unfortunately was never seen. One of the negatives that I'll get into more later, this film is a bit much at times. I think that's the best way to describe it. Before I get to the negatives, there's a few more positives I do want to say about this film. One, there's actually some really well done social commentary in the movie, especially through Michelle Pfeiffer's character. The female secretary at a big business. You get a lot of scenes with her, confronting Max Schreck and sort of being confronted and having fear put in her by her employer. You also have her coming home and jokingly, saying like,
"Honey, I'm home!" Oh, I forgot. I'm not married.
Playing with the, typical roles of a female that she wants to have, but also kind of hates the fact that she has to reach. It was you really understood her character quite well. As a matter of fact, all of the characters are very well written in this movie. The tragic backstory of Penguin being abandoned as a child, it's done in extreme Tim Burton fashion, but it's still there, and you kind of understand everyone's motivation. This movie even has some lines of dialogue that hit very well and kind of puts a lot on the mind. This line in particular.
How can you be so mean to someone so meaningless?
When you hear lines like that, it really kind of sticks with you, and it kind of lets you think about more of the underlying themes of the movie, which is something that the original film was sort of lacking in. Something else with this film, as I mentioned before, it is a bit too much sometimes. Tim Burton kind of outdid himself a little bit with the weirdness, a lot of that involving around Penguin, especially, Penguin's ending in the film, with how they all the penguins kind of come out around the body. It was just a little bit weird. It was a little bit weird, and it didn't quite fit what was going on. Also, the birth of Catwoman, the scene in which, the Catwoman is born, really kind of doesn't make any sense as to how she becomes Catwoman. That just felt very, very weird and out of place, and that part of the film didn't age well, much like some scenes of the previous movie. Also, I kind of consider this both a pro and a con. A con in the sense of, Penguin very creepily hardcore tries to have sex with Catwoman, and it's just so overbearing at times. It's just every time they interact, he's making some sort of joke about it.
Just the pussy I've been looking for. Naked, sexual charisma.
And while with the Penguin character, you definitely want to feel uncomfortable and awkward by him, just when it's constantly going on and on like that, it just really got annoying to a certain degree. Now I want to sort of talk about the positives that are the specific reason as to why I think this film is slightly better than 1989's Batman, and they're twofold. One is the chemistry between Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer. Every time they're on screen together, there's sexual tension that you could cut with a knife, and both are kind of using traumatic events to make up for their actions, and they can see that side of themselves in each other. And the dynamic relationship between the two throughout the movie is actually very interesting. Another reason that I really love this film is that the humor works so much better. In the first film, you know, when they attempted humor, it really was just so drastic and compared to what its tone was. But in this film, it takes the humor in dark moments and just kind of makes a dark joke out of it. And it worked a lot better in this film, you know, with scenes like this one.
You missed.
Speaking of humor, this has one of the funniest fucking moments in any Batman movie I've ever seen, and that is this scene right here.
These are the names of the firstborn sons of Gotham City, just like I was. And like me, a terrible fate waits for them. Tonight, while their parents party, they'll be dreaming away in their safe cribs, their soft beds, and we will snatch them, carry them into the sewer, and toss them into a deep, dark, watery grave.
Penguin? I mean, killing sleeping children, isn't that a little,
Lovely cinema. And most importantly, the number one thing that I like about this film, more so than the original Batman, is that this film is just a lot more competently made. The filmmaking, on a technical level, in this film is really impressive. The cinematography is beautiful, and the direction is significantly improved over the previous film. Even some of the action scenes are improved. You know, they're still not all that great, but they are a step up from Batman 1989. And where they saw they could improve, they definitely improved on, and that really shows in the technical filmmaking aspects of this movie. The only major negative that this film has is that the plot and story get kind of convoluted. It really kind of, at one point you kind of lose, you know, what Penguin's plan is and where his true motivation lies, and it all starts to kind of get confusing. I mean, at the end of the movie you kind of put it together like, oh, okay, that's why he did that, that's why he did that, okay. But while you're watching it, you kind of lose yourself a little bit, and that was a bit distracting, but it's saved by the amazing chemistry between Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer. And another great underlying theme that this film had was just, you know, the corruption of businessmen in politics. It was more of a heavy-handed one in this film, but it was, you know, a great theme that they explored nonetheless. Ultimately, while Batman Returns does suffer from some scenes not aging that well, much like the original 1989 Batman, and it's a bit too much and too on the nose at points, I do think it is a much more competently made film than Batman 1989, and I do think it is a slightly better film than Batman 1989. It's fun, it's dark, it's just the right amount of goofy, not too goofy like the last movie. And much like Batman 1989, I really like this movie, and I'm going to give Batman Returns a B+. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to start a brand new classic movie next week, but we're going to go way in the past. You'll see what it is. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.